Hey.
Hi, welcome to the SBDC. I'm Katie.
How you doing, Katie? Kyle.
Hi, I'm Chelsea.
Hey, Chelsea. Kyle.
Nice to meet you.
Very good to meet you.
Well, what can we help you with today?
Well, when I graduate here in the spring, I was going to want to start a barbecue business. I was just going to see anything I need to be aware of, any good nuggets of information that you might advise me to be aware of.
Well, one situation that has given business owners headaches for years is the franchise tax, and that's mainly because the lack of information about franchise tax and confusion about who has to pay it and who doesn't. I mean, I've heard of a bunch of small businesses being hounded by the government for back taxes, even though they were exempt, but they just didn't realize they were exempt.
So they're exempt, and the government still wanted them to pay taxes? How does that happen?
Yeah, well, I mean, even if you're exempt from the franchise tax, you still have to fill out what's called a no tax due information report just to prove that you are indeed exempt from the franchise tax.
So, why do we have a franchise tax?
Well, in 2006, the Texas Supreme Court ruled that the state's school funding system was unconstitutional. And so, as part of the restructuring, the franchise tax was expanded to include Texas businesses that were enjoying state liability protection.
Let's get to know. So I was looking here. I pulled up a couple of these forms, and they're asking for a NAICS and an SIC code. Has a little blank for those on the forms. What are those?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you're actually looking for the NAICS code, you can search for keyword on the census site. Also, if you jump over from that site to the OSHA website, you can search for your SIC code by keyword. These codes will be really helpful for as you continue to research your business, the industry, who your competitors are, and just anything you need to know about your business and industry.
So, do I file for the franchise tax?
It actually depends on what kind of business that you want to be.
Well, I plan on structuring the company as an LLC.
That type of business is subject to the franchise tax, along with partnerships, corporations, business trusts, professional associations, business associations, joint ventures, and other legal entities.
So, what kind of entities wouldn't be subject to the franchise tax?
Well, the ones that would not be subject to the tax would be the sole proprietorships, general partnerships that are directly and solely owned by natural persons, as well as passive entities.
Just out of curiosity, one of my friends, Christy Schiller, she was thinking about starting a nonprofit. She wants to go out and rescue German Shepherds and train them as police dogs and then donate them to the police force.
Wow.
Would she have to pay a franchise tax on that?
Nonprofit entities who have requested and been granted an exemption do not have to pay franchise tax. But if they have not requested or been granted an exemption, then the entity must file all the reports. And this is one of the companies that I was talking about in the beginning that is exempt from the franchise tax but doesn't realize it, and so they end up paying the tax anyway.
What about royalty interests in oil wells? I know my dad has some interest in Midland. Does he have to pay franchise tax on those?
They actually consider royal interest in oil wells to be actual interest in real property in Texas. So therefore it would be a business doing business with Texas, so they would have to pay the taxes.
So how do I figure out how much franchise tax I owe?
Well, there are three basic ways to figure out your tax base. The first way is by calculating your total revenue minus the cost of goods sold. The second way you can do it is to calculate your total revenue minus compensation. And then the last way is your total revenue times 70%. You want to calculate all three of these to see which one comes up with the lowest number, so that you'll be taxed the least amount that you can be taxed. And then once you have your tax base figured out, whichever one you want to go with, the franchise tax is 1% of that number.
That sounds like it could really add up. Is there any way to pay less taxes?
Actually, before 2010, you could be eligible for discounts if you made anywhere from $300,000 to $900,000. But after 2010, the no tax due threshold moved up to $1 million, so there's no longer any discounts available.
Well, you just mentioned a no tax due threshold. What is that? What is that number? How do you figure that out?
Well, if your total revenue for the year is less than $1 million, then you are exempt from the franchise tax. You're eligible for the no tax due threshold, which is $1 million. So if you make less than that, then you don't have to pay taxes, you're exempt from them, but you must file an exemption form, like we said earlier.
Mhm.
And another way that you could be exempt is if your taxes due are less than $1,000, then you're exempt from paying taxes at all.
Well, I mean, at least I don't have to worry about paying taxes the first year since we're only gonna have 2 months of sales on the books at the end of the year, and that'll definitely be under $1 million.
Well, actually, you have to annualize your total revenue if the taxable period is less than 12 months. Then you can figure out if you are eligible for the no tax due threshold, easy computation, and discounts.
Annualizing it? How would I do that?
Okay, well, let's say you start your business on September 15th. Your franchise tax period would be from September 15th to December 31st, which is 108 days. So, if your total revenue for that period between September 15th and December 31st is, let's say, 150,000, you would take 150,000, divide that by the number of days of the taxable period, 108, and that equals 1,388. Then you would multiply that number by 365 days, which equals $506,944. So this would be your annualized amount. Now, once you have the annualized number, you can use that to see if you're eligible for the no taxes due threshold or the easy computation.
Okay. Well, what was that you just said? Easy computation? What is that?
Right. If an entity makes $10 million or less, you can file using the easy computation by multiplying your total revenue by a tax rate of 0.575% instead of the 1% that would usually be used.
It's a little more straightforward. And when is the report first due?
It is due on May 15th of the following year.
Okay, so come May 15th, and it's time to file. How do I file? Do I have to turn in a hard copy? Do I have to send it to them? Can I email it to them? Can I do it online? Do they have a website or something?
Yeah, actually, the easiest way to do that is just go ahead and you can go online to the www.windows.state.tx.us.
Okay.
And from here, you can click on a link right here, and that'll take you to this website, and you can use the it's called WebFile, and it's just an online text filing program that's free, and you can just use that to file it on there.
Oh, perfect. That'll be much easier.
So, what happens if worse comes to worse and I'm forced to close down my business? Do I still have to pay any outstanding franchise taxes even if my business closes?
Yes, you will still have to pay a franchise tax for the total period that you were conducting business in the state of Texas, even if it was less than a year.
And, you know, you might want to consider if your barbecue trailer doesn't go too well, you might want to consider becoming a wholesaler by wholesaling your barbecue sauce to retail stores. And if a majority of your revenue comes from selling the barbecue sauce to supermarkets, your franchise tax rate would actually go down from 1% to 0.5%. So it's a pretty good discount on that.
Yeah, that'd be great. So, the bottom line is, I won't have to worry about paying a franchise tax as a taxable entity until I'm doing at least $1 million in business. But, even when I don't owe any taxes, I still have to file a no tax due report. Otherwise, I'll have a real headache with the state when they try to collect back taxes that I was exempt from and really didn't actually have to pay.
Correct. But be aware that in 2012, the no tax threshold amount will be going down to 600,000 instead of 1 million. So you'll have to watch out for that this next year.
Absolutely.
And when you do make over 1 million or 600,000 in 2012, remember you'll have to compute your tax margin by either the first way, which is taking revenue minus cost of goods sold, the second way, which is taking revenue minus your compensation, or taking your total revenue times 70%, and there you'll multiply it by the 1% for the tax rate. Or if you're a wholesaler and selling your barbecue sauce, it would be 0.5%.
Perfect. Wow. I'll be honest, I had no idea there were so many resources available to me at the SBDC and on the state website, and I had no idea. This is great.
Oh,
But
well,
anyway, I think that
about everything that I need. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Really
nice to
appreciate
meet
your
you.
time.
Thanks for coming out. And if you have any questions, just come back and we'll answer anything you have. Also, that website that I showed you where you could pay your taxes, the state website has a lot of information on there about anything you need to know about the franchise tax. So it's a very good resource.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for your help.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
luck
Have a
on
great
your
day.
business.
Yeah.
Me too.